This week in Starbase, SpaceX is getting started on the Flight 3 test campaign with the rollout and testing of Ship 28 on Suborbital Pad B, and on top of that we have even more testing closures. We also have a ship shuffle, tank farm upgrades being finished, and some new stuff with Starfactory. Starting off at the Sanchez Site, we have tons of preparations for the second launch tower at Starbase. Just around the time of Flight 2, we saw pieces for Level 8 and 9 arrive from Roberts Road, and just the other day we saw SpaceX loading the 7th section onto a barge at the Kennedy Space Center with a pair of new/old tanks that might be used over at Massey's. Currently, we do not know when the second tower's foundation will be started, but you can bet we'll be here to cover it when it does. The new concrete structure at Sanchez is still somewhat of a mystery, but recently SpaceX began installing Starlink ground terminals on the roof. This could be an indication that this building might be for communication equipment and possibly for better communications with the vehicle on ascent. Over at the production site, we can see SpaceX performing another ship shuffle with Ship 28 out of the way, which we'll be covering later on, by rolling Ship 29 out of the high bay and then rolling Ship 30 back into the high bay. Then, after Ship 30 took Ship 29's place, Ship 29 rolled back in and took Ship 28's spot, which has become the main tiling location for ships. Right away, SpaceX started using the suction cup method of testing how well heat shield tiles stay on. They mainly used this method on the glued tiles around the flap fairings and main section weld seams. After Ship 25 lost so many tiles and got so far into flight, SpaceX really wants to have these heat shields in as good a shape as possible if Ship 28 or higher were to make it to entry interface. If SpaceX can make it through re-entry with these heat shields, imagine how well it will work once they work out all of the issues and find better ways of optimizing the layout of tiles. While Ship 29 was out of the high bay, we got a glance at some of the pre-flight work, such as the vent holes in the ship engine section. These first appeared on Ship 25, however, we're yet to see them in action. Currently, we are waiting for Ship 29 to go onto either the engine install stand over near the rocket garden or wait for the new high bay to be completed to have its engines installed. Moving to the Ringyard and future vehicles, we have several sections for Booster 13's methane tank and some sections for Booster 14's LOX tank. Booster 13 has been waiting for its new engine section since the original one was scrapped a couple of months ago for unknown reasons, and finally it decided to show up and roll into the mega bay. Then later that night, SpaceX stacked the LOX tank onto the aft section, completing the bottom of the booster. All that is left is Booster 13's methane tank, so it should be fully stacked within just a few weeks. Looking over at the new high bay, SpaceX is making great progress with installing the windows, the roof, and getting the new bay kitted out and ready to receive its first vehicles. This new high bay will most likely be for ships only, which would leave the high bay for small maintenance items and tiling. Over at the Starfactory, SpaceX has started to put up newer and bigger load-bearing columns for the new phase of the factory. As with most things here at Starbase, we will have to wait and see whether this section is taller or will just have higher capacity bridge cranes for the heavier sections of the vehicles. Over at the launch site, we can see the SpaceX LR11000 crane hooked up to the ship quick disconnect as crews work to fix it and refurbish it after Flight 2. They had to do this because the flight broke one of the primary support actuators that lift the QD up into the correct position so it can connect to the ship. After fixing the ship QD, the LR11000 was disconnected from the arm and the load spreader was lowered to the ground. After finishing up with the ship QD, the crane rolled over to Suborbital Pad B to prep for the eventual rollout of Ship 28. Moving to the other suborbital pad, Pad A, we can see SpaceX has started to scrap it. This mount has a ton of history with the program, going all the way back to Mark 1 cryo testing. However, for those of you who remember, the original mount from the Mark 1 days was destroyed when SN4 had its anomaly just after completing a static fire. The pad was also home to a ton of success, such as SN5, SN6, SN8, SN10, and SN15's hops. Pad A also hosted the first ever super heavy static fire with Booster 3 and many other tests that helped push this program to where it is today. Goodbye Pad A, you will be missed, and SpaceX showed it no mercy by cutting it up piece by piece until only the footings of the legs remained. Currently, it is unclear what SpaceX will use this area for in the future, but considering they hyped this up with a possible Pad C or other structure and just ended up building a car park, this spot will probably just be used for storage for the time being. Staying at the suborbital site, we can see the new concrete wall being painted and getting ready to receive what seems to be a gate to the suborbital site. It will be interesting to see what becomes of the suborbital test site with all of these changes. At the orbital launch mount, SpaceX has begun to reinstall the main booster quick disconnect flex hoses, which is a great indication that all of the subcooler and pump upgrades are nearing completion. Once completed, SpaceX will need to perform a purge of all of the pipes in the system to clear out any debris that could have been left behind from construction. SpaceX could either do a simple nitrogen gas purge, which wouldn't require a road closure, or they could chill down all the lines, pumps and subcoolers and then open the main waterfall valve and just dump liquid nitrogen overboard as they clean and test the system. This sort of test would require a road closure. Now for the biggest news of the week, Ship 28 rolled to the launch site for Flight 3 testing. In order for Ship 28 to be rolled out of the high bay, first SpaceX had to move Ship 30 out of the way in order to gain access for the SPMTs. Once they rolled Ship 28 out of the bay, we got a fun surprise from SpaceX as the SPMTs and transport stand were decked out in Christmas lights, a lighted tree and an animated Santa. Then, once they had completed loading counterweights on the front of the SPMTs, SpaceX placed 3 inflatable snowmen on the front and then began the roll. Then, while rolling out, we saw that they even added Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer between the 2 SPMTs and lights to the inside of the engine bay, as well as projecting a snowball on the aft flap. This was clearly done for the 24/7 cameras scattered around Starbase just to have a little bit of fun and potentially SpaceX publicity as well. We'll just have to wait and see if anything ends up getting posted on social media. Ship 28 still has its crane hookup points on the nose and is missing its livery. It is unclear why SpaceX isn't using their new 2-point lifter on S28 and is sticking with the ship lifting squid. As a reminder, the new 2-point lifting system is used so that SpaceX can get rid of the crane hooks and tile over them before a ship rolls out for the first time. The original design destroyed many tiles, necessitating a redesign to what is currently used. Since Ship 28 still has the crane lift hooks and no livery, this is most likely not the final rollout of this vehicle. SpaceX may roll it back to the high bay for final checks before stacking it on Booster 10 at the pad. Shortly after arriving at the pad, SpaceX hooked up the EGA 11,000 crane to the top of Ship 28 to lift it onto Suborbital Pad B to get it ready for its upcoming test campaign. And would you look at that, we already have one test in the bag, a spin prime. We also have road closures throughout next week. The current closures are 0800 to 2000 Central on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, with regards to Ship 28's other half, Booster 10 is currently still at the Rocket Garden, waiting for the orbital launch pad to be finished with refurbishment.
Or at least it was until I woke up this morning to this wonderful view of Booster 10 at the launch pad. For more details, tune in to next week's Starbase update.
I'm Ryan Caton for NSF, thanks for watching, and goodbye.